Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be talking about Cavalier difficulty and more specifically the new sets of nodes and my personal feedback on them. Now I kind of had my mind set up on all of the nodes a couple days ago, but I did want to wait until I finish exploring every single one of those quests 100% and then kind of like draw my final conclusions, because one is definitely clear. Those nodes do need some tweaking and some adjusting, because the smoothness of them and effectiveness of them is nowhere near where the last set of nodes were by the end of it. Now, if you remember correctly, when the previous set of nodes initially came out, it actually got tweaked and tuned almost every other month, whether they started working slightly differently or they were just kind of like quote unquote sped up. But the point is, they didn't start where they finished, and there was a lot of work to do to make them as decent and as good as they were. And it should go without saying that I do not think that this new set of nodes is overall as fun and engaging as a whole as the previous set was. So, to do that, we are going to basically jump back to Kabam blog, and then I will go through node by node and say what I would change about each of them individually. But before I do that, again, I want to reiterate that this is, again, just me giving my feedback and my personal opinions, because I, well, refuse to admit that something is perfect pretty much ever, unless I truly love it. And these nodes do leave a lot to be desired, and by comparison, just by remembering how it was the last couple of months on the previous set of nodes, I can say that the Cavalier event difficulty quest seemed longer, seemed more dull, and the node's benefits, for most of them, didn't really seem to have as much impact as the old set did. So clearly something's buffering somewhere. Right, and yeah, let's jump to Kabam blog, the post about all of these new quality difficulty nodes, and I'm gonna go through each and every single one and note what I would change and how I feel about the node overall. Now, science one. Now, truth be told, about the science one, we only had 3 parts to play through, so you don't have as much experience with this node in particular, and bugs put aside and whatever else not that we had to deal with. Overall, I think the node is quite decent. The biggest problem with this node, for me personally, is that 85% damage reduction. Now, if it was 85% damage reduction for pretty much any other debuff except poison, that probably would be fine. But if you do have multiple poisons on you at any given time, that also significantly reduce your willpower heal. So even when I was using like rank 3 6-star science champions that were not poison immune, I was still taking significant amount of damage, and I could see my health bar kind of like melt away. Maybe not completely rapidly, but it made it immediately clear that the most important thing is to have a poison immune champion. Not necessarily a science, but make sure you don't take that poison damage. And I think it goes against the design of the node, where the point is where to empower science champions, right? And yeah, so that is what I would change. I would up that damage reduction to about 95% on something, to make sure that 5-star rank 5 champions and 6-star rank 3s and perhaps 5-star rank 4s and 6-star rank 1s can actually have, let's say, 3, 4 of these poisons, or 2, 3 at least, of these poisons active before you actively start losing health. And that would open up the rest of the science class. Now, when it comes to the weak in the knees, I don't like that passive weakness addition there, but at the very least you can either get around it with Resonate Mastery or Parry Stun if you do not have perfect counters. Like for my 4-star challenge, I was using Red Hulk and just doing 3-hit combos. It was annoying because I didn't have any poison immune science 4 stars ranked up other than that, pretty much. but it still kind of worked through. It was just not enjoyable. But I think if I would be taking a lot less damage from poison itself, I could use rest of my science champions and I would have been much better off. So yeah, I think the only thing that really needs changing here would be the 85 damage reduction increase to 95, and then if you play very slowly you could use it to heal up, or if you play more aggressively you still wouldn't lose your health rapidly. Now the tech one, and tech one actually I'm okay with. I liked it. It also was one of the faster ones to ramp up, because that 10-second regeneration, if you time your heal block correctly, you basically get like 7, 8, 6 furies from the first regen that the opponents get. And yeah, actually, compared to previous one, I kind of even almost liked this tech node better. Buster was a great MVP for me personally. Warlock did some crazy cool things. When I was running through 4 stars, I actually used Starlord for some of it, and then if you luck out and either armor break or heal block on a level 2, you can also gain some furies. But for the most part, I think tech 1 is pretty much fine. I wouldn't change much there at all. And I think it was on par, if not slightly better, to the previous one. Oh, about science one, overall I didn't find it as enjoyable as the previous one, but it isn't too bad either. Right, so cosmic one. And cosmic one is decent. I like the idea behind having the focus on armor breaks, because those are two of the things that cosmic champions are good at. Previous one was buffed up, and this one is armor breaks. Now here the problem lies, however. Many cosmic champions do not stack the armor breaks. And even if you, I don't know, take Venom or Hyperion and spam Hyperion's level 2s or Venom's heavy attacks, you can never get past that one armor break. And for vast majority of the fights, I was unable to get to 10 Furies before I actually completed the fight. With many of the champions who have constant access throughout the entire fight to an armor break debuff, but just can't spam dozens of them. So my solution to tech node would be quite simple. I would increase the base starting percentage to about 30 to 40%, and then give an additional 5% chance for each consecutive armor break, basically. So if opponent is under an armor break debuff, you have, let's say, flat 30 or 35% chance for each hit to gain a passive fury, and then each additional armor break would give you additional 5% chance. And I think that would kind of equal out for most part, and that would open up many more champions like Hyperion, Venom, and a whole bunch of others who have access to a single armor break. Because currently it was either you are using somebody that spams a crap ton of armor breaks, or you're just not going to get the full benefit from the node by the time the fight's gonna be over. Ultimately, it was kind of alright. Again, I don't think it was as fun, as quick, as cheesy as the aptitude one, but it's not too bad, and I would definitely be willing to play with it. Right, so the skill one, and skill one is kind of annoying, and here are my problems which I got annoyed by. For instance, even when you use Black Widow Deadly Origins, you still have to get that first shock effect on, and when you're using Black Widow Deadly Origins, you want to punish heavy attacks, or you want to intercept, for instance, and then obviously you're not gonna have opponent parry stand, and it was a bit iffy. It's definitely a bit of a learning curve, and just kind of to get used to it. But ultimately, again, I don't think there was much wrong with skill one, aside from the fact that it's extremely exclusive. For every other class node up until skill 1, I think we had significantly larger subgroup of actual class champions that can benefit from this node. And I have heard in my comment section that quite significant chunk of people ended up doing, let's say, skill quest without using a single skill champion. And what does that mean? This simply means that they didn't have like the better options to take advantage of it. And speaking of better champions for these nodes, I'm gonna upload that video tomorrow, where I'm just gonna go definitely kind of class per class node, where I'm gonna list the best options, even as 4-star champions for these 4-star challenges. But let's get back to the skill node. So I think the skill node can actually be fixed very, very simply by adding bleed to the list of debuffs here, and then vast majority of the skill champions would immediately be represented. So if you add to skillful distraction the fact that opponents cannot evade if they are inflicted with disorient, incinerate, shock, or bleed effect, that would be job done, and the node would be good. I'd like the node a lot. Currently, as it stands, I didn't find it completely awful to play against, but that's probably largely, again, because I do have quite a substantial roster and plenty of options. And when a node works, it works fine. The problem is when you don't have quite the right counters. And yeah, again, this one isn't bad per se, but the previous one, again, was better, I think. Right, the Mutant one. I think a Mutant one, outside of using X-23 or Wolverine, is probably the most useless one and the slowest one, and when you're actually clearing it, you hardly get a benefit at all. And for this one, I actually have no real idea how to fix it. If I had to change it, I would probably simply change the relentless mutation node, and then I would go with mutant attackers gain an indefinite passive fury, increasing attack rating by 35% every time they gain a regeneration buff or passive, or prowess buff or passive. Because again, as it stands, mutants don't really have that many champions who can gain regeneration buff quickly enough and frequently enough for this node to make a significant difference. I think for most part, I just abandoned this node altogether and just kind of like used Colossus and just smashed through a lot of it with Colossus's damage, not this node's. Because, yeah, it really doesn't come together, because you're meant to get this regeneration buff by using your special attacks, ideally whilst having a promise effect active. But none of the mutants, maybe outside of Professor X, really spam those special attacks all that much. Like, you still need to do the 2-3 combos to get to that level 1 to launch that special one. And if that region doesn't activate, then nothing happens. And if it does, great, you got 1 Fury, and the fight will be long over before you can actually stack them up. So yeah, I think you can pretty much discard the first node, the healing factor. I think that 2% regen is pointless. And here just have it so that mutant attackers gain the Fury buff whenever you trigger regen or promise buff. And yeah, I think that would work just well enough. And then I don't know what to do with this one. I suppose still the same thing. It will not trigger if the defender's regeneration is... Or yeah, and add the prowess in this line of text as well. And get rid of the first node. And I think you'd have many more options that would function properly. Basically, discard the healing factor, include prowess with regeneration in both of these nodes, and you should be good. But yeah, this node is definitely significantly less impactful and worse than the previous mutant one, I feel. And the Mystic one, I was actually again somewhat disappointed, because you can't get past 5 stacks of prowess, and I was hoping that you can get up to 10, 5 indefinite ones and 5 of the ones that expire. But no, that's not the case, and that unstoppable that comes ever so frequently just throws you off the rhythm of the fight. And even when you have 5 promises, you still have substantial amount of fight time wasted just like working around those unstoppables, because even when you're using champions who have no problems to nullify buffs, you cannot simply hit in that unstoppable for most part, like if you're using Black Widow Clairvoyant, because opponents are stun immune, so you can't parry stun and can continue attacking. You just have no other option but to wait for the unstoppable to expire. And same with, let's say, Scarlet Witch or even Doctor Strange. Automatically nullifies the buffs, yes, but it doesn't happen instantly. So I did not enjoy the Mystic node at all, especially compared to the previous one. Previous one was well fun and much more interesting, and this one, again, I don't even know how to fix. I suppose the first part, the Arcane Zeal, kind of okay. Didn't seem to have too much problem with it, but I don't think Unstoppable should have been a part of it. I'd almost prefer if they would get unblockable buff instead of unstoppable, or maybe make it so that unstoppable expires instantly and or doesn't even trigger properly if you have the fight prowesses, because currently every single fight really did feel quite tricky, quite finicky, and nothing that you really go through and blitz. Anyways, that will be about it. As I said, overall, I definitely did not like this set of nodes and did not enjoy it as much as I did the previous one, which is fine, because this is effectively just the first go at them. They all can still be modified just like the previous set was. Again, if you remember, the previous set of nodes was quite significantly worse at the start. Like, we had polka dot power with skill, where many champions didn't even gain power, and then we had mutant node where it only reduced 50% of bleed damage, which made no effect pretty much, so on and so forth. So there was quite a bit of tweaking, and I do hope that Kabam tweaks these ones appropriately as well. All that being said, once again, I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video, and if you have, hit that like button, hit that sub button, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the